Jeff Mailu. By training and practice, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, particularly for something called sports medicine. So I get to hang out with players and do some work with players, fixing those that get injured and sometimes in the field. But primarily, I'm a missions practitioner. I spend 4 days of my week running a ministry called Medical Missions Africa that reaches out to people through Medicare and healthcare. And 1 day a week, in the middle of the week, I go to church. I'm a bivocational pastor for missions at Nairobi Chapel Imara. And that means also Sundays I spend most of the day at church.
Yeah, that sounds like your week has 8 days. You're an orthopedic surgeon, you run a mission agency, and you are a pastor.
Yes.
So where did it all start? When did you decide you want to become a doctor, for example, if you remember?
I actually have never found an answer to that, but I was young. The way people ask, what do you want to be? And I tell people, I just wanted to be a doctor. I don't have a particular incident, as many people say, where something happens to you or your family and then you really want to do it. I just wanted to be a doctor and I never know why. And that was as young as when I was in class 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and when did you decide that you want to do missions?
Back in the year, I think 1999, 98, somewhere there, I was in prayer and had quite an encounter with the Lord. My mind was set on my ways, and shortly after high school, I was at Strathmore University, back then called Strathmore College, and I was somewhere there was a church outside the university where we used to go as a Christian Union, and I was just praying an early morning and had an encounter with the Holy Spirit where specifically, and in particular to missions through healing, which was a bit confusing and confounding to me at that point in time. I had not yet started medical school. So by the time I went to medical school, I knew this is my journey.
Okay.
And yes, it took me away from the desire for politics. As people know, I talk a lot. I complain a lot about what happens in politics. I was very set on the ways of policy making and finishing medicine and setting policy for this country in politics.
So you went into medical school having already known that you would do medical missions?
Yes, I went to medical school very clear about particularly the calling to ministry and missions work. But exactly how I would do that and how they would match with my career, I was not very sure.
Not sure.
Yes.
And I sense that you are already a Christian by the time you were joining the university.
Yes, I got born again 3 weeks after joining high school.
Okay.
And that was quite a journey. I had grown up in church in many ways, but had never really committed my life to the Lord. And coming to know the Lord in high school helped me a lot. I kept growing. I didn't know much about ministry, but at least I began to grow in the Christian disciplines, and much more in my final year in school. So when I left high school, my heart was set to seek the Lord.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you joined the university, did you go looking for the Christian Union, or how did you find your way to the sea?
I was already living in Nairobi.
Yeah.
And going to one of the churches near the city, since I lived at the railway station. And so I had been living with one of my cousins who had been very active at the Egerton Christian Union. And so they talked to me about the CU and how to get involved when I went in there. So when I went to college, I knew there must be a Christian Union somewhere. And some of the guys I knew, I bumped into within the first 2 weeks who were already going to the Christian Union, told me about it, and I headed out to what we then called Msusu, Main Campus Christian Union of the University of Nairobi. Yes, and how do Bible studies, fellowships. So I was active in evangelistic teams and Friday fellowships. I rarely attended Sunday services since I was already a member of a church within Nairobi.
Okay.
Yes, but it's really the Christian Union that shaped my path into ministry and into missions.
How would you say that happened? How did the CU shape your path into ministry and missions?
I think, well, in the first year, one of my mentors, Dr. Shifra Kuria, and later to be husband Simon Derito. Shifra was involved as a STEM staff, followed by a gentleman called Kirago. And for some reason, I was drawn to them and we got to know each other. And they took up my mentorship, and that really shaped my path. Because then I got involved in Christian Union leadership very early as a class fellowship coordinator. I was already doing missions in my village. I was leading a missions organization we started as early as 20 years or 19 years of age, preaching out across our location and division. And then because of that, I was also able to interact with men in the Christian Union who are then the leaders. To surprise you that one of us is now the National Director of Focus. So that's where my friendship with him goes back to. And the Bible study group I got into had very strong leaders. Most of them are evangelistic team leaders, so they gave me opportunities to preach, to grow, to study the Bible together. I think our Bible study must be the one that used to go longest. Would start at 7 and sometimes at 10 would still be chatting because the presence would be so strong. Men were committed, we were praying to each other. And a lot of those guys are still now very strong Christian leaders in the marketplace. Many have gone to other countries, some even to Islamic countries, and have done quite some commendable work. For their sake, I will not be saying their names. Yes.
And do you remember encountering Focus? How did you encounter Focus during your time in the CU?
Yes, so as I said, the first thing is just coming to the CU and being able to start fellowshipping. The first thing is there were the Bible studies that most of it we used materials that were tailor-made from Focus. There was what we call a Bible exposition and self-training program. There was a commission conferences, there was a Ezra conferences, there was a leadership training that went on. So that was the encounter that I began to get. We also went out to the Focus Center for some of our what are they called, the group activities for the boys, for the girls, and that was quite a joy growing in that way. And as I grew up for myself, I became close to a lot of the Focus staff, and I think that's a trajectory both my wife and I have continued to stay close to the Focus fraternity. And that, besides just having been a member of the CU and going on to the leadership, because at the leadership at least we're closer to the Focus staff who are assigned to our campuses, first at main campus and then at Medical School Christian Union, where I served as a evangelism and mission secretary. That interaction and the mentorship, actually for me the mentorship was more important than the Bible studies. Because I was very close to a lot of guys. I think, in fact, one of them is now the Secretary General of NCCK. And you can see that interaction through. I had the opportunity to be very close to at least 2 of the mission secretaries of Focus in my early days and in the young days. So as I was trying to figure out how does a mission secretary in a CU prepare missions, the privilege of having Duncan Olumbe and my good friend and mentor John Etich take me through this kind of thing. So that journey is something I would really urge a lot of CU, those fellowship students. You're there, please don't just sit in fellowship. You might just go out and just become another nominal Christian. But if you have good encounter with your CU leadership, because Focus is the students, it's not just the staff, but the staff are there to facilitate both the associates and the students, and the associates are there to facilitate students and get mentorship. That was a good journey, and the affiliate body to Focus, the CMF, where we're able to interact with a lot of our other colleagues who are Christians, who are able to help us as medics figure out the journey. That journey, there's something about rubbing shoulders with someone one-on-one, not the sermon on Fridays, not the sermon on Sundays, but hearing the stories, seeing the struggles, understanding this journey, asking the questions and getting answered. What is this? This is what helped me shape the journey. The ministry we run today was born in college days and actualized by the time I was an intern. So that tells you what that journey was like.
Yeah.
Yes.
So being with people when life is happening and
Yes.
seeing them. So how do you mention mentorship, training, leadership experience, Bible studies, friendship?
Yes, that's important.
Well, yeah, that's important for the Christian student on.
Yeah, not viewing staff as this people are not unreachable. They're basically there to be friends with you, to walk with you, to help you answer questions. And some of those questions will be answered by your fellow students as you interact in the Bible studies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you said you started MEMA, or MEMA was born when you were a campus student.
Yes.
What does MEMA do today?
Medical Missions Africa does basically frontier missions to the unreached people groups. We're out there in Northern Kenya, in some of the urban centers among the poor. And how we've done it is mostly through community transformation. So we pick Christian professionals. We say Christian professionals making Christ known in Africa and beyond. So we go out into Christian unions, into fellowships in churches, among professional forums, and we talk to people about how they can use their professional skill and their time and their leave times to actually give out to the Lord. Most of our work is medical. I would say about 80% is through medical programs. We organize short medical trips, either specialized or just basic medical camps, and we do multiple of those every year. And then we're also in the process of setting up our own faith-based mission facilities. And we also train and send out long-term missionaries. I think we currently have about 12 staff spread across the region and in the country. And we partner with other mission agencies to place these people and place those that do not fit within our calling. So it's been quite some work. And I'm glad to say, in terms of healthcare, we've delivered healthcare to over 120,000 people in the region over that period. And I guess I stand to be corrected by my administrator, Izan, who keeps the records, but I think well over 16,000 people have come to know the Lord. We have seen churches planted. Surprise you that in East Pokot alone, our missionary planted 12 churches through medical help. I think one of the plenary speakers in this commission, we planted one of the churches with them out of a single day medical camp where we saw about 2,000 people, and 196 guys gave their lives to the Lord, and a church was born out around the Riruta satellite area. So God can use anything and can use any skill, but the core thing is partnership, because we are not a church. So when churches are planted, we have to hand them over to existing church institutions that can be able to do that. But that's how we go out. We run these mentorships, we run meetings. And so if there are any students who are listening to us here and they would like to hear more, how can you put the students together and organize them so that beyond even school they can be active in ministry work, whether still working as professionals or wanting to go, and also those who are health-based? Talk to us.
Yeah.
We will show you how to, in partnership with Focus.
Yeah.
Yes.
So someone is listening and they are wondering, they have heard so much in this conference.
Yes.
And they don't know where to start, or they are not even sure, like you are not sure how things are going to turn out. What would you tell someone who feels they are called, but they are uncertain of how that calling is to happen or to turn out?
I am glad to be asked that question, because that's the thing that makes my heart tick. Seeing people make the first step towards committing to a lifestyle of missions in whichever way the Lord calls them. So I'm sure, having been through this conference, you've heard and you visited maybe the virtual booths and seminars, and you've heard a little bit of what people are doing and where they can start. So encourage you, if you're feeling that fire, that challenge in your heart, don't do what many people do. We say in missions, 50% of the people who sense the calling of God never really respond to it. And I don't know, I think to me there's an element of disobedience in that. If you consider that the Lord considers faithfulness to him a big element of getting into heaven, besides your salvation. You can read the parable of the talents. So I would challenge the people that are feeling the calling, that number one, as the altar call is made today, do not hesitate to make a commitment to the Lord. You may not know how it goes. I'm sure there will be some decision cards have been part of commission for some time. Fill in that card, and I'm sure the forecast staff, together with those of us participating from mission agencies, will get in touch with you. The second thing is commit yourself to a period of prayer and seeking the Lord. Then go out to someone who can mentor you. There are all these organizations that are involved. Get in touch with one of them and begin the journey. Begin to be exposed to missions and ministry. Begin to be exposed to places where you can go to. We've taken, for example, a ministry. We take students who are on break, particularly medical ones, and we take them to different medical camps in different parts of the country. Some of them unreached, some of them reached. Ministries to everywhere, from everywhere. So then you can be able to experience some things. Don't just sit, don't just sense it and stay there. Plug in and do something. That's the biggest problem we face with Christians today. People want to just hear and be excited and go home and say how wonderful that thing was. I was part of a 4,000 major force. That will change nothing. In fact, the only thing it can do is set you up for judgment because you've heard. The best thing is plug in, do something small. There are lots of people doing ministry in many ways and still doing their professional works. There are others who have left and gone out fully. But you can only be able to define your path by plugging in, by responding positively to the Lord today. Make that first step, make that commitment, get into prayer, get to know someone, get to know an organization that can involve you. And if after the meeting nobody is writing or calling you, just put up that email to info to focus. We will get in touch with you. I'm sure somebody will get in touch with you and we can shape your path. So please start the journey, make the commitment, spend time in prayer to define your path, plug into some organization, get mentorship, and get doing something.
Start doing something.
Start doing something. No matter how small. One of the things my mentor Kiragu once told me is, Jeff, if all that you can do is give a street child half a loaf of bread, today, start it. You've changed someone's life. At least one meal is given for the day. Start. Don't sit there. And you can start as a student. You do not, people say I have nothing. My friend, by the time you are going to a university, how many Kenyans have gone to university? Do you know how many people have a bachelor's degree in this globe? Go online and look. 6.7%. So you are a rare being. Out of close to 8 billion people now, you are in the 6% or 7% if you round off. You have something big to offer. Don't just sit. And the Lord has not put you there for nothing.
The Fellowship of Christian Unions, reaching students, changing nations.